constituency, Belgood, Bondo constituency, Budalangi constituency, Bumola constituency, Bura constituency, among others. There are 124 of them, and of course that is a motion that will be debated by the members of the National Assembly this afternoon, who at the moment are walking into the chambers to take their respective seats before the business officially commences. The motion by the Honourable Member John Kiarie will be debated this afternoon. The balance of time is 43 minutes. The motion is on tree planting along the roadsides and road reserves. The debate on this motion had already begun before it was interrupted on Thursday, November 10th, 2022. The Honourable Member for Kwanza Constituency, Honourable Ferdinand Wanyonyi, will move a motion on the publishing of the rules and regulations for private land use and management in regard to the minimum and maximum land holdings in Kenya. The motion will be moved should the members dispense of the business that preceded in the order of business this afternoon. There will be petitions, 2 of them, which will be presented before the House this afternoon. One, the gazettement of whole irrigation scheme land to allow for expansion of the county headquarters of Tana River. The petition will be presented by the Honourable Member Said Buya, the Member of Parliament Galole, on behalf of residents of Galole in Tana River County, and thereafter the petition will be subjected to the public petitions, that is the relevant committee. The other petition is on funds spent by national government contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. This petition will be presented by the Honourable Speaker on behalf of Mr. Stephen Toro, Secretary General of Consumer Federation of Kenya, COFEC. If you're just joining us, the business of the National Assembly is about to begin. On your screen is the Speaker of the National Assembly, Honourable Moses Masika Wetangula, who is walking into the chambers ready to oversee the business of the National Assembly on this 15th day of November 2022. I will now hand you over for this live broadcast of the National Assembly proceedings. My name is Edward Kabasa. Enjoy your viewing.
Waheshimiwa, tuombe. Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu, ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umeteua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu, twakusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Twakuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa, na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako ziendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Honorable members, we have quorum to transact business. Clerk.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions.
Members, several petitions. The first petition, I'll call the honorable member for Galole, Side Buya. Is he in the house? If it's not, there are 2 other petitions. Honorable member, take your seat. Honorable member, we agreed the nearest seat. Honorable members, there's a petition regarding funds spent by national government contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. Honorable members, pursuant to Standing Order 2252B, which requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member, I wish to report to the House that I have received a petition from Mr. Stephen Mutoro, being the Secretary General of Consumer Federation of Kenya, COFEC, a non-profit and non-political society registered under the Societies Act Cap 108, which is committed to promoting consumer protection. Honorable members, the petition avers that towards the end of the term of the Jubilee administration, Kenya shillings 55 billion was spent without the approval of the National Assembly contrary to provisions of Article 223 of the Constitution. The petitioner is concerned that the expenditure of such colossal sums was incurred by the government at a time when the country was grappling with a huge public debt, high inflation, and a high cost of living. Honorable members, the petitioner states that the lack of transparency and accountability in the run-up to the transition from one administration to another was a matter of great concern. Further, the petitioner is concerned that if unchecked, similar incidences will recur in future, leading to further burden to the taxpayer. Honorable members, efforts by the petition to have the matter addressed by the Minister of National Treasury and Planning have not been fruitful. The petitioner therefore humbly prays that the National Assembly orders that the Auditor General conducts a forensic audit on all public expenditure by the national government between July and September 2022, amends the relevant laws to bar outgoing administrations from spending any such public funds irregularly, and make any other recommendations that it deems fit. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, I direct that the petition be committed to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the matter and report its findings to the House and to the petition in accordance with the Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Honorable members, take your seats before I go to the next petition. The nearest seat available. Honorable members, there's a petition regarding the removal of members of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission. Honorable members, Standing Order 2252 of the National Assembly Standing Orders requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In this regard, I wish to convey to the House that my office is in receipt of 4 petitions seeking the removal of commissioners of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, pursuant to the provisions of Article 251 of the Constitution. Members, can you take your seats? This is a bit long. The nearest available seats. Honorable Sunguli, that is not the nearest available seat, certainly. Honorable members, Article 251 of the Constitution grants any citizen the right to petition the National Assembly for the removal of a member of a constitutional commission or holder of an independent office for either serious violation of the Constitution or statute, gross misconduct, or incompetence. The petitions received are as follows. A, petition by the Republican Party. The petition seeks the removal from office of Ms. Juliana Cherera, Mr. Julius Nyang'aya, Ms. Irene Masit, and Mr. Francis Wanderi on the grounds of violation of the Constitution and other laws. In the petition, the Republican Party states that the four commissioners, through their action of issuing a press statement rejecting election results on grounds that the chairperson of the IEBC had conducted the verification and tallying process in an opaque manner, A, failed to promote public confidence in the integrity of the office they hold and brought dishonor to the nation and lack of dignity for the office contrary to Article 73(1)(a) of the Constitution. B, failed to adhere to the guiding principles of leadership and integrity under Article 73(2) of the Constitution. C, failed to act in a manner that avoids demeaning the office that they hold, contrary to Article 75 of the Constitution. D, failed to adhere to the values and principles of public service, contrary to Article 232 of the Constitution. And E, failed to adhere to take into account the provisions of Section 9 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, number 19 of 2012, and should therefore take personal responsibility for the reasonably foreseeable consequences of any actions or omissions arising from the discharge of the duties of the office. Honorable members, take the nearest available seats. Honorable members, the Republican Party ultimately prays for the consideration of the petition to His Excellency the President pursuant to Article 251(3) of the Constitution. B, a petition by Reverend Dennis Ndwiga Ndumbi. Honorable members, this second petition seeks the removal from office of Ms. Juliana Cherera, Ms. Irene Masit, Mr. Francis Wanderi, and Mr. Justus Nyang'aya on the grounds of serious violation of the Constitution and the law, gross misconduct, and incompetence. In the petition, the petitioner, one Reverend Dumbi, states that the commissioners committed serious violations of the Constitution by A, demonstrating partiality and biased conduct in agreeing to the proposal to alter the results of the presidential elections in favor of one candidate, or in the alternative to force a runoff contrary to Article 10(7)(3)(2)(b), C, 75, 138, 232, and 249 of the Constitution, Sections 9, 26, and 30 of the IEBC Act, Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Officer Ethics Act. B, agreeing to the incentives and giving in to the proposal by the National Security Advisory Council, NSAC, to alter the results of the presidential elections contrary to Articles 10, 732BC, 75, 138, 232, 249 of the Constitution, Sections 9, 26, and 30 of the IEBC Act, Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Officer Ethics Act. C. Disowning the results of the 2022 presidential elections in which the commissioners had participated in the verification and tallying, contrary to Articles 10, 73, 2B, C, 75, 232, 249 of the Constitution, Section 9, 26, and 30 of the IEBC Act, Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Officer Ethics Act. D. Accepting the proposal to alter the results of the elections to subvert the will of the people of Kenya, contrary to Articles 10, 73, 2BC, 75, 232, 249 of the Constitution, Sections 9, 26, and 30 of the IEBC Act, Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Officer Ethics Act. E. Issuing press statements with close semblance with the press statements by Azimio La Umoja One Kenya presidential candidate, contrary to Articles 10, 732 BC, 75, 232, and 249 of the Constitution, Sections 9, 26, and 30 of IEBC Act, and Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Office and Ethics Act. F. Failing to follow the well set out guidelines for the verification, tallying, and announcement of the presidential elections results contrary to Article 10, 732 BC, 75, 232, and 249 of the Constitution of Kenya 2010, Sections 9, 26, and 30 of the IEBC Act, and Sections 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 16, and 24 of the Leadership and Integrity Act, and Sections 8, 9, 10, 12, 16, and 17 of the Public Officer Ethics Act. Honorable members, Reverend Dumbi further states that the 4 commissioners grossly misconducted themselves by, honorable members, take your seats, the nearest seat available. The nearest seats available. Honorable members, Reverend Dumbi further states that the commissioners grossly misconducted themselves by A. Concurring to support the unlawful attempt to alter the results of the presidential elections in favor of one candidate, or in the alternative to force a runoff. B. Acting in liaison with one faction in a presidential election. C. Refusing to follow the well set out guidelines for the verification and tallying announcement of the presidential elections. And D. Swearing affidavits in support of petitions challenging the presidential election. 8. Additionally, honorable members, Reverend Dumbi also states that the 4 commissioners demonstrated incompetence by A. Agreeing to the proposal to alter the results of the presidential elections in favor of one candidate, or in the alternative to force a runoff. B. Failing to follow the set out guidelines for the verification and tallying announcement of the presidential elections. C, swearing affidavits in support of petitions challenging the presidential election. D, disowning the results of the 2022 presidential elections. E, conveying and attending meeting purportedly to discuss and appoint counsel to represent the Commission in the presidential election petitions. And F, attempting to appoint counsel to represent the Commission in the presidential election petitions. Reverend Dumbi concludes in his petition by urging the House to find that the petition discloses sufficient grounds for the removal from office of the 4 commissioners and transmit the petition to His Excellency the President for further action. Petition C is by Mr. Geoffrey Langat. Honorable members, can you take the nearest available seats? The nearest available seats, Mpuri Apuri. The third petition, honorable members, is a petition by Mr. Geoffrey Langat. In this petition, the third petition seeks the removal from office of Ms. Irene Masit, Ms. Juliana Sherera, Mr. Francis Wanderi, and Mr. Julius Nyangaya on the grounds of serious violation of the Constitution and other relevant laws, gross misconduct in the performance of their functions, and incompetence. In the petition, Mr. Geoffrey Langat states that conduct of the 4 commissioners violated Article 3.2 and Article 81 EV of the Constitution and Sections 26 and 30 of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission Act 2012. Mr. Langat concludes his petition by praying that the National Assembly takes the necessary steps as per Article 251 of the Constitution on removal of the commissioners. D is a petition by Owor Steve Jerry. The fourth and final petition seeking the removal from office of Ms. Juliana Sherera, Francis Madenge, and Ms. Irene Masit and Mr. Julius Abonyo for violation of the provisions of Article 3.2, Article 10.2, Article 81E, Roman 3, Roman 4, and Roman 5, and Article 8.2 of the Constitution in their conduct leading up to the declaration of the presidential results in 2022 general elections. Mr. Jerry calls upon the House to consider his petition, urgently vote on it, and transmit it to His Excellency the President for the appointment of a tribunal to investigate the conduct and violations committed by the 4 commissioners as outlined in his petition. Honorable members, in accordance with paragraph 3 of Standing Orders 230, the 4 petitions now stand committed to the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs for consideration. The work of the committee is to guide the House by way of comprehensive report on whether the petitions satisfy the grounds for removal of any or all of the cited members of a constitutional commission as set out in clauses 1 and 2 of Article 251 of the Constitution. The committee has 14 days within which to submit a report to the House as required under paragraph 4 of Standing Orders 230. My predecessor, the Honorable Justin Muturi, has previously guided this House that the proceedings relating to the removal of persons from office are quasi-judicial in nature and require judicious attention and sobriety. Indeed, honorable members, even the High Court has had occasion with regard to the petition for the removal from office of the then Auditor General, Mr. Edward Ouko, to remind the House that it must conduct any quasi-judicial proceedings in strict compliance with Article 47 of the Constitution and Section 4 of the Fair Administrative Action Act 2015. Section 4 of the Fair Administrative Action Act 2015 reads as follows. 4.1. Every person has the right to administrative action which is expeditious, efficient, lawful, reasonable, and procedurally fair. 2, every person has the right to be given written reasons for any administrative action that is taken against him. 3, where an administrative action is likely to adversely affect the rights or fundamental freedoms of any person, the administrator shall give the person affected by the decision A, prior and adequate notice of the nature and reasons for the proposed administrative action, B, an opportunity to be heard and to make representations in that regard, C, notice of a right to a review or internal appeal against an administrative decision where applicable, D, a statement of reasons pursuant to Section 6, E, notice of the right to legal representation where applicable, F, notice of the right to cross-examination where applicable, G, information, materials, and evidence to be relied upon in making the decision or taking the administrative action. 4, the administrator shall accord that person against whom administrative action is taken an opportunity to A, attend proceedings in person or in the company of an expert of his choice, B, be heard, C, cross-examine persons who give adverse evidence against him, D, request for an adjournment of the proceedings where necessary to ensure a fair hearing. 5, nothing in this section shall have the effect of limiting the right of any person to appear or be represented by a legal representative in judicial or quasi-judicial proceedings. 6, where the administrator is empowered by any written law to follow a procedure which conforms to the principles set out in Article 47 of the Constitution, the administrator may act in accordance with that different procedure. Honorable members, quasi-judicial proceedings for the removal from office of a member of a constitutional commission or of the hold of an independent office differ significantly from the exercise of the investigator powers of the House under Article 125 of the Constitution, whereas the House or its committees may actively question witnesses to elicit evidence in an inquiry. Article 251(3) of the Constitution only requires the House to consider a petition and satisfy itself whether the petition discloses a ground for removal. Interrogation and confirmation of the allegations contained in the petition shall be the work of a tribunal appointed by the President for that purpose if a ground for removal is disclosed. Honorable members, in the light of the foregoing and previous challenges encountered in the consideration of petitions for removal of constitutional office holder, permit me to direct as follows with regard to the manner in which the committee shall conduct its hearings. 1, upon receipt of the petitions, the committee shall adopt a timetable for its consideration of the petitions. 2, the committee shall transmit copies of the petitions to the affected commissioners and inform them of the time or times, date or dates, venue or venues that it intends to conduct its hearings over the petitions. In transmitting the petitions, the committee shall allow the affected petitioners at least 7 days to prepare for any hearing over the petitions. 3, the committee shall afford the affected commissioners the right to appear in person or through legal representatives and the right to cross-examine the petitioners under oath over all matters relating to the petition. Honourable members, can you take your seats? The nearest available seats. The nearest available seats. Honorable Mbande, this is not the nearest available free seat, is it? Honorable members, the committee shall afford the affected commissioners an opportunity to respond to the petitions, either orally or in writing. The committee shall transmit copies of any additional documentation presented by the petitioners to the affected commissioners as soon as is practicably possible, and allow the commissioners an opportunity to respond to such additional documentation. The committee must refrain from prosecuting the petitions on behalf of the petitioners. Instead, it shall allow each petitioner to present their case and permit the affected commissioners to present their responses and thereafter consider whether a ground for removal has been disclosed or not. Honorable members, I therefore call upon the committee to hear both the petitioner and the affected commissioners with minimal interventions. The committee is to provide a forum for hearing the competing claims and not a forum for advancing the interests of either the petitioners or the affected commissioners. The committee must remain decorous at all times and civil towards all parties that appear before it. I would urge the committee to borrow a leaf from the conduct of quasi-judicial proceedings, such as the one now referred to, from comparative parliamentary jurisdictions, including our very own Senate, whenever the Senate hears impeachment proceedings. The committee has 14 days within which to submit a report to the House as required under paragraph 4 of Standing Order 230. Further, honorable members, once the committee tables its report, the House will have 10 days to decide whether or not the petition contains valid grounds for removal of the members of the Commission. Honorable members, cognizant of the multiple petitions referred to the committee, and the fact that the petitions relate to 4 commissioners of the IEBC, the committee may, if it becomes necessary, seek an extension of the foregoing timelines to enable it to comprehensively interrogate the petitions and report to the House. I thank you. Yes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. I came midway through your communication. And of course, given my experience in the House, I had not in any way.
It was not a communication.
Okay. A petition, yeah.
Yes.
You are
presentation of a petition.
You are presenting a petition from members of the public, I presume,
yes, to
the House. Mr. Speaker, I only have one issue which I need your further guidance on. Just one issue. Mr. Speaker, it has been a tradition. Indeed, it is part of our rules. I hope you're getting me, Mr. Speaker. It has been a tradition.
Under Standing Order 226,
yes,
Honorable and I,
yes,
the members in the House are free to make comments and contributions to these petitions for 30 minutes.
Okay, okay.
I'll give each member 2 minutes.
Mr. Speaker, thank you very much. That now gives me even a better latitude to make my comments. Mr. Speaker, this is a house of rules, and indeed we pride ourselves as such. It has been tradition, and in fact, it has been part of our rules as provided for by the standing orders, that whenever petitions of whatever kind, petitions of whatever nature, be they petitions calling for removal from offices of commissioners, be they petitions concerning the welfare of members of the public out there, it has been our tradition that petitions touching on matters that are actively before courts are not entertained. In fact, this House has been very cautious, right from the time I joined it in 2013, not to entertain any petition of whatever kind, from whomsoever and from wherever, that will touch on issues which are active before court. The Speaker, I came midway through your statement, and I take note of one particular petition, one by Reverend Dumbi, if I'm not wrong. In his petition, among other things, he avers that the 4 commissioners were involved in convening of meetings to appoint legal representation against the rules of the commission. I think so. So, Speaker, as we speak, I don't know how much time I had. I'm seeing a yellow thing.
Your time is over.
No. Mr. Speaker, as we speak, the Deputy CEO of IEBC, Madam Ruth Kulundu, is in court on, among other things, convening a meeting with the 4 commissioners to decide on legal representation. So this House will be contravening its own rules, and indeed the law generally, by entertaining a petition that is touching on issues that are actively before court. I don't see the urgency. We can wait for the court matter to be concluded. And
your time is order.
You know when I speak, when I am speaking low, and my friend Pukosa is heckling. There's no point of heckling. Just pay attention to what I'm saying. And I'm raising.
Order, honorable members. Now, the screen is full. I don't know if you want to contribute on this or an intervention. Robert Bukose. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I first want to correct my colleague, Honorable Opio and I, that I'm not heckling. And that is very wrong to make that improper motive against me, knowing very well his record that he's been suspended in this House in the past for gross misconduct. Honorable Speaker, when you look at the petition by Mr. Stephen Mutoro, I want to support that petition in view of the fact that governments must be accountable. And Mr. Mutoro brings a petition that 55 billion was spent in a period of 2 months. And I think this is a very worrying thing, that when the committee will be looking into that, the committee must be able to hold those accounting officers who signed and who participated in defrauding the country of the 55 billion. Secondly, on the other petitions by Reverend Dumbi, Geoffrey Langat, and Owor Jerry, on the removal of the 4 commissioners. The case that is in court is not about the removal of the 4 commissioners. It is about hiring of the lawyers. And I think the committee will be able to look at whether the matter is sub judice or not. And when a member claims a matter is sub judice, he should be able to present the documentation in the floor to show to that effect. Without that documentation, you cannot be able to carry the work of Parliament. I support.
The Honorable Gideon Ochanda.
Mr. Speaker, I want to do a comment on the issue of 223. What happens, Mr. Speaker, is the owners of this House to make right and approve budgets, the national budget of this country. And Article 223 gives the space within which the executive is able to use monies that are not yet approved by this House. Mr. Speaker, it's a contradiction in one way or the other, but more fundamentally, the amounts that are involved, particularly the amount that is involved in the petition, over 200 billion, is such a huge amount of money that if it is allowed under 2223, I think something must be done. Basically, the executive is taking over the role of making the budget from this House. And I want to believe, Mr. Speaker, that the House needs to be awake to this so that we, either in one way or the other, place limits within which this can be allowed, or, on the other hand, do away with this Article 223 in wholesale. So, Mr. Speaker, if we don't want to be denied this chance of making the budget as this House, then we need to watch out the issue of Article 223. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Didimas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support all the petitions as read by yourself, and most importantly, the petition by a Kenyan seeking to remove some commissioners for the reasons that have been properly laid down. And I want to say that all Kenyans have given powers by the Constitution to petition this House on anything as long as they raise matters of fact, Honorable Speaker. And I just want to defend my very good friend, Honorable Pio and I. I've heard some members of parliament making noise to him. I just want to say that the Honorable Pio and I is justified. No, he is a member of a party that has a very clear history that today they can decide to remove him from office. So he's justified that the party did right to put him where he is. But on the second thing, Honorable Speaker, I support that petition. And
Yes,
anybody...
Yes, Honorable Andai.
Mr. Speaker, it's not my nature to interrupt the debate or my colleagues on their floor. Mr. Speaker, is it in order for the Honorable Baraza to impute very improper motive, firstly on myself and secondly on my party, which has got nothing whatsoever to do with the matter before us, Mr. Speaker? Can you rule him out of order? And also to make him understand that whenever I stand here to speak, I speak on very serious issues. And I remain very objective, given my long experience in this House.
You made your point.
Thank you.
Honorable Didymus Wandai is not part of the petition.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me summarize my support that we look forward to the hearings. We will be there to listen. We will write to the...
His time is up. Honorable Beatrice Elachi. He is already off the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker,
Given a floor to Elachi.
I just want to say this to this House today, that indeed, yes, these are Kenyans who have brought this petition. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, you remember when we were in the Senate, this is an institution. As politicians, we have worked, we come, we decide how it moves, and then again we will come every 5 years after elections. We always have issues with IEBC. But one of the things that I realize, we deal with commissioners, but we don't deal with the staff. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, as we look at the petitions, can we also now realign IEBC to go back to the independence that it had? And since the three are also coming out, so it means we shall have a clean slate. I don't want to say anything about that, as I know, yes, there are those who are in court. Let us look at the matters that are in court before also we go to the petition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is out of order, Honorable Kajwang?
Mr. Speaker, there's an issue which we have dealt with, we struggled dealing with in the 13th Parliament, and it continues today. And you may want to make a considered ruling on this, how members dress in these chambers. It's a very concerning issue, because you have a speaker's manual on dress. Yes. And I do not have to. You are a member of this House for a long, long time, so you have this on your fingertips. If a member is dressed in a manner which does not depict his religious persuasion, or which does not generally, which is
Go on.
Yes, yeah, Mr. Speaker, like the member who just spoke a few minutes ago, without disclosing his name for the sake of his constituents. You may have to let us know if we can come with apparels which do not suggest our religious persuasion, other than the fact that we are male.
Of his apparel is
I want to request you, Mr. Speaker, because this has been very confusing. Somebody comes here with a headgear, another comes here with a headband, and it has been a big problem, Mr. Speaker. Is it in order that you can, at one point in time, in your own discretion, look through the Speaker's manual and give us what should be the correct dressing in this House?
Thank you, Honorable TJ. I will do that. Honorable Gitonga Murugara.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Speaker, I wish to speak on two issues. The first one is the sub judice rule, which has been alluded to. The Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs is very well averse with the sub judice.
Not a matter before the House, so you need not belabor.
Thank you very much. The second one is that, as the Speaker has rightly observed, the committee is actually a quasi-judicial institute that is going to play the roles like that of the court, which means it's going to be an impartial umpire and listen to all the parties differently, so that each party is heard and given a fair chance to present and defend itself. Therefore, it did not worry the House as regards whether the House is going to prosecute or try to defend. The committee purely is quasi-judicial. It's going to hear the parties properly and then guide the House on what is to be done with these 4 petitions. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Millie Odhiambo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just wish to indicate that I'm serving my 4th term. And I'd want to encourage this House to borrow from history. Once elections are done, the country moves on. So let us not get stuck at a point where we still want to feel like we are electioneering. Our side of a coalition went to court. The court ruled against us. We were told we were hot air, cold air, wild goose chase, tame goose chase. And we accepted and we moved on, Mr. Speaker. So I think actually this petition is in very bad taste. It's taking the country back. And I think what we need to do is let the commissioners go on with their work. The ones who are supposed to retire, let them retire honorably. Let the ones who want to continue with their work continue. Because even if you look at what the court ruled, there is nothing that untoward that was said about them, nothing illegal that they did. And so, Mr. Speaker, I just want to say, let the country realize that we are moving on. And let us stop getting stuck. Let us borrow from history and what has gone on in the past. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I see my time is up.
Kimani Ichung'wah.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I wanted to raise first on a point of order to what the Honorable Millie Odhiambo was purporting, because I think we must appreciate that these 2 petitions are petitions by members of the public who have every right to petition the House, and consider these both petitions with the due diligence and justice, give justice unto them, Honorable Speaker. But Honorable Speaker, more profoundly is on the issue of the removal of the commissioners, Honorable Speaker, the petition by Reverend Thumbi. Honorable Speaker, I just want to beseech members, since this is a petition by a member of the public, the committee on JAILAC, and Honorable Speaker, you've done well, you have guided the JAILAC committee on how to conduct work in regard to that petition. We allow the committee to consider that petition, and I think it's just the first stage in such a process when you're dealing with constitutional commissions. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, I don't even want to say much on that. Honorable Speaker, on the petition by Mr. Stephen Mutoro of COFEC, Honorable Speaker, I really want to support this petition and note, Honorable Speaker, that indeed the previous regime committed close to 200 billion shillings out of the budget cycle. And this is something, Honorable Speaker, if we do not stop now, is going to portend a very bad precedent even for the current regime. And I really want to ask the Public Petitions Committee to take up this matter with gusto and address the issue of the abuse of Article 223 of the Constitution. Because many of the things, Honorable Speaker, that you find were committed to in the last days of the last regime are things that would have waited for the annual estimates this year and be considered, or even for a supplementary budget this year, Honorable Speaker. And therefore, I really want to support that petition by COFEC and encourage the Public Petitions to act very fast and get us to know the real details of what are these unseen things that the previous regime was so intent on.
The Honorable Atandi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And Honorable Speaker, I want to comment on the petition by Stephen Mutoro on abuse of Article 223. Honorable Speaker, this article was well intended by the drafter of the new Constitution. But Honorable Speaker, this article has been abused extensively by the previous regimes. Honorable Speaker, the article is intended for responsive governance. And when there are emergencies and there's need for certain expenditures to be cut, this is when this article takes effect. But, Honorable Speaker, the trend has been that you see government huge infrastructural projects being commenced by way of this article. And I think this is something which we have discussed at Budget Committee, and we are asking you, Honorable Speaker, to help us so that in future, and especially in this term, we do not have situations where a huge project like Expressway being commenced by way of Article 223. It's very sad, Honorable Speaker. Thank you.
Honorable Orero, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would wish to comment on those items. One, the petition by Mutoro about the amount of money used, especially towards the electioneering period. This Article 223 had very good intention how it is supposed to be used, but I think all of the governments, I hope not the one now that we have, they have always used their leeway to use the money that is not from within the budget. I concur with my fellow colleagues that any monies that must be used, they should be always within the budget. Now, about the commissioners, the petition by Dumbi, you realize that these are the commissioners which conducted the elections that just passed. However, I beseech this House that normally we don't resurrect emotions when the country is already moving on. Despite the fact that there are members' petitions, and despite the fact that this is the preliminary stages, and we are giving the JLIC committee to go and look into them, give them the opportunity to be heard. But when it comes back to this House, I would wish that we look at these commissioners as those also who are engaged, and you realize that it was a very competitive election, that now that we are in the government, I want my fellow colleagues in the other divide of the House that we look at this in a manner that will make this country run and not go back.
Honorable Johanna Ngeno.
Thank you, Speaker. I wish also to support the petitioners. Most importantly, Mr. Speaker, is on the matter of expenditure of money that may not have been appropriated by this House. Mr. Speaker, there is a tradition where most of the outgoing governments, either the national government or the county government, to use money in a very reckless way. Mr. Speaker, I think this has to come to a stop, and this petition will bring that one to a stop. And also not only expenditure of money, even employment of people at the time when the counties or the national government is coming to an end, or during the transitional period. Mr. Speaker, that one has to be stopped with immediate effect. Number two, Mr. Speaker, is on the question of removal of commissioners. Mr. Speaker, I'm in support of that. But most importantly, Mr. Speaker, I wish, as part of the contemplation in our looking into this matter, this question of recruiting the commissioners with the involvement of political parties. Mr. Speaker, we go to churches. We don't elect the bishops. We don't elect the pastors. But we keep on going to those churches for their prayers. Why are we involving ourselves on the selection of these commissioners? We need to have a commission that is non-partisan, that has nothing to do with parties, that has nothing to do with politics, that has nothing to do with contestants, so that they can be looking into this matter in a very fair way. Mr. Speaker, that is my submission.
Silvanos Osoro.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker.
Yes, the Honorable Millie, what is out of order? Give Honorable Millie the microphone. There you are.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for indulging me. And I do apologize for raising this point of order at this point because our committee is sitting for betting, so I have to actually leave. Mr. Speaker, we've just been served with a supplementary order paper, and my concern is that I've not seen Suba North in the approval of nominees to various constituency development fund committees. So I know it's coming. That's why I'm saying I was requesting that you indulge me now because I have to leave. So that's, Mr. Speaker, when it does come, if you could kindly consider it, Mr. Speaker, because we have multiple roles, and when that role will be coming, I currently have a role with the Defense Committee, but I cannot let the role of Suba North go because I'm in Defense Committee. So I'm just seeking your indulgence that when this comes up, if we could find out why, because we've already submitted the names, and it will be unfair for some constituencies to be considered and others are not. Thank you for indulging me.
Honorable Millie, the Honorable Mbadi is here. He will adequately represent you.
I had the floor, Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
I had the floor, Honorable Speaker.
Yes, Osoro.
Honorable Speaker, I equally rise to support this petition. Honorable Speaker, this is a house of order, a house that follows rules. It is within the rights of every citizen to petition this house on any matter that arises, and it's not limited to anything that even touches on politicians. Anything that any public member feels to raise with this house is free to do so. And Honorable Speaker, while I support that, we need to relook at this whole thing about expenditure and abuse of Article 223 of the Constitution. Just as my colleagues have said, Honorable Speaker, it has become like a norm that any outgoing regime creates and finds a way to make money, drafts a system of possibly withdrawing money from the public coffers without checks and balances. If this thing is not relooked upon, because it's not only limited to the national government, it's something that is a national government, it's something that is in the county governments, it is something that is affecting the common mwananchi. And we must relook at this thing clearly. And of course, Honorable Speaker, nobody should feel or look at this whole petition from our political inclinations, because it has nothing to do with target. I mean, it's a public matter from an individual of this country. So, Honorable Speaker, we must support every petitioner and then listen to them as provided by, to give them fair hearing so that we are able to get to the bottom of this. So I rise to support. Thank you.
Kalasinga Majimbo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this time. Mr. Speaker, first, I want to comment on the petition of Stephen Mutoro, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you look at that amount of money that was so misspent, Mr. Speaker, during the time some of us were in Senedia, Mr. Speaker, we can now judge and know where that money must have been spent. We want the committee, Mr. Speaker, and the auditor general to do a clear report to us. Show us, Mr. Speaker, where and what projects were done with that money. Mr. Speaker, so that we can now know, sometimes to give a lesson, that in any case, any government is going to hand over to another one, or when we end, Mr. Speaker, the election cycle, we must have responsibility members, I mean, somebody to run the small of his office, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when you see the second petition that is talking about IEBC commissioners, Mr. Speaker, you can now see why, Mr. Speaker, some people are rushing, wanting to announce and declare some people as candidates, Mr. Speaker, for presidential when they know how much they have spent previously, 55 billion. So, Speaker, this is why I say, and I support, that never ever in this government should we have a handshake, Mr. Speaker. These are the proceeds of the handshake, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable members, we now go to the next petition. The member side, Buya from Galole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to read petition number 003 of 2022 regarding the gazettement of whole irrigation scheme land to allow for the expansion of the county headquarters of Tana River. I, the undersigned, on behalf of the residents of Galole, Tana River County, draw the attention of the House to the following. Number one, that Hola irrigation scheme in Tana River County was gazetted on the 26th April 1963 and covers an area approximately 12,630 acres. Number two, that the scheme was initially used as a settlement scheme to settle thousands of Mau Mau freedom fighters and residents of Tana River in general in the 1960s. That the geographical location of Hola irrigation scheme at the heart of Hola town has over the years proven to be disadvantageous to area residents in view of the fact that it continues to block the much needed expansion of Hola town, which is the headquarters of Tana River County. That in a bid to address this long-standing challenge, officials of the national government and the county government of Tana River and the National Irrigation Authority, members of parliament, and the National Land Commission and other stakeholders met in Hola town on the 15th of July 2021 and mutually agreed to degazette 2,000 acres in the southern eastern parts of the scheme to facilitate expansion of Hola town. That the meeting further proposed extension of the scheme's northern borders by a similar acreage of 2,000 acres so as to compensate for the degazettement. That the proposed degazettement and replacement of the southeastern segment of the scheme will secure the expansion of Hola town and Tana River County in general through economic, social, and infrastructural development that is presently hindered by the scheme's current location. That efforts to have the matter by the relevant authorities have not yielded any fruit, and that the issues in respect of which this petition is made are not pending before any court of law or other constitutional or legal body. Therefore, your humble petitioners pray that the National Assembly, through the Public Petition Committee, intervenes to facilitate timely degazettement of the 2,000 acres in the southern and eastern parts of Hola irrigation scheme to facilitate expansion of Hola town and to facilitate extension of the scheme's northern borders by similar acreage of 2,000 acres, and makes any other orders deemed fit in the circumstances of this petition. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The petition is committed to the Public Petitions Committee. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. 1. The 5th and the 6th batch of nominees to 58 National Government Constituency Development Fund committees from the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board for the following constituencies. Number 1, Baringo North, Bomachoge Chache, Bomet Central, Chepalungu, Embakasi Central, Embakasi South, Kabuchai, Kajiado Central, Kigumo, Kiharu, Kikuyu, Kuria West, Lamu West, Matungu, Matungulu, Mumias West, Narok West, Nyaribari Chache, Samburu North, Samburu West, Shinyalu, Sigor, Sotik, Starehe, Turkana South, Uriri, Wajia West, Bomachoge Borabu, Bomet East, Borabu, Embakasi East, Mgwen, Fafi, Jem, Ogem, Ijara, Kimilili, Kisumu East, Kitui West, Kitutu Chache, Kitutu Masaba, Lari, Luanda, Lurambi, Malindi, Madare, Madera, Mbooni, Nambale, North Mugirango, Olkalau, Saku, Samburu East, Suba North, Tetu, Thika Town, Tigania West, Ugenya, and Westlands. Number 2, Honorable Speaker, the revised list of nominees for the following constituencies from the National Government Development Fund Board. 1 is Lamu East, Dadaab, and Kitui Central. Number 3, Honorable Speaker, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the Baringo Central constituency for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificate therein. Number 4, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2019 and the certificates therein. 1. Sotik. 2. Kacheliba. 3. Eldama Ravine. And 4. Ndaragwa. Number 5, Honorable Speaker, the reports of the Auditor General and the financial statements of the following constituencies for the year ended 30th June 2020 and the certificates therein. 1. Chepalungu. 2. Chesumei. 3. Teso North. 4. Sirisia. 5. Matungu and Embakasi South. Number 6, Honorable Speaker, the report of the Auditor General and the financial statements of the Baringo Central constituency for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. And number 7, finally, Honorable Speaker, is the report of the Auditor General and the financial statements of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2021 and the certificates therein. A is Kathiani Water and Sanitation Company Limited. B, Jomo Kenyatta Foundation, Commission for University Education, Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Council, Kenya Medical Supplies Authority, KEMSA, Kenya Medical Laboratory Technicians and Technology Board, National AIDS Control Council, Egerton University, Machakos Technical Institute, National Transport and Safety Authority, Kenya Ordnance Factories Corporation, Revenue Accountability Statements, that is the Kenya Revenue Authority, and National Crime Research Center, and finally the Tourism Regulatory Authority. I beg to lay the papers, Honorable Speaker.
Haven't you left out some? My list goes up to Q. Or your list is different from mine?
There was an element of review, but we possibly could proceed. Tharaka Technical and Vocational College, yes. University of Embu, and Tharaka University College.
Yes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Soro. The co-chair of EALA.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Tuesday, November 15th, 2022. The report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to East African Legislative Assembly.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
The Honorable Muya.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion that pursuant to the provision of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of East African Community and Rule 13.5 of East African Legislative Assembly elections of members of the Assembly, rule, this House adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the names and nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for the election as members of East African Legislative Assembly, laid on the table of the House today, Tuesday, 15th November 2022. I beg to move.
You move, or is it a notice of motion, or you're moving a motion? It's a notice, so you don't move a notice.
Sorry, it's a notice of motion.
Thank you, thank you. You just end up there. Yes, next. Understanding orders at 3-1, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, you have a notice of motion? Go ahead. Give the notice.
Honorable Speaker, I rise under Standing Order number 33, seeking leave to move the adjournment of the House for the purpose of discussing a definite matter of urgent national importance regarding to an increase in the prevalence of chemical pesticides in the country. Honorable Speaker, during the 12th Parliament, I presented a petition in this House drawing its attention to the increase in the prevalence of chemical pesticides in Kenya, which poses a risk to the health to human health, but also not only to human health, but also to the environment and biodiversity. The respective committee tabled a report of the petition. However, the resolutions of this House are yet to be implemented. There is still prevalence of chemical pesticides in Kenya, which pose a risk not only to human health, but also to our biodiversity. These products were classified as follows: 24 products that cause cancer, 24 products that are mutagenic, 35 products that cause endocrine disruption, 140 products that are neurotoxic, and they are causing brain damage in children. 262 other products that show clear effects on reproduction, toxicity, and are carcinogenic. Honorable Speaker, concerned that about 76% of the total volume of the pesticides used in Kenya have one or more active ingredients that are categorized as highly hazardous pesticides. Noting that these highly hazardous pesticides are a global human rights concern, endangering inter alia the right to food, health, as well as clean, healthy environment, and are regulated by international policy instruments to which Kenya is a state party with direct operational implications in the pesticide management. Honorable Speaker, about 44% of the total volume of pesticides used in Kenya are not allowed for use in Europe and other jurisdictions, but by some unexplainable double standards are still allowed and permitted in Kenya. In fact, these pesticides that I have pointed out have been banned in America and Europe, but their laws still allow them to manufacture them for export to countries that are ignorant enough and foolish enough to accept these products into our country. And that responsibility, Honorable Speaker, falls on the Pest Products Control Board, who have failed to undertake their due diligence and to protect the lives of Kenyans. This amounts to criminal negligence on the part of the Pest Products Control Board. In the United States of America, the Superior Court of California awarded a farmer $250 million as damages for developing cancer as a result of the repeated exposure to Roundup herbicide, which is manufactured by Monsanto. The same product is available in Kenya, approved by the Pesticide Control Board. The court found that Monsanto did not make information on the dangers of the pesticides available to the public. The same Roundup is found in aggregates across the country.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, you've made your point. You are seeking to have a motion of adjournment.
Yes.
And the points you are making will come when you move the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
You need 20 members to stand in your support. Honorable members, we have enough numbers, and I direct that 1 hour to the end of the sitting, the Deputy Speaker will be given time to move this motion, and then members will. She was giving notice. And for those who are not following, like the Honorable Mbadi, she is protesting the influx of harmful pesticides in our country, some coming from countries where they are manufactured, but their use in those countries is banned, but are dumped in Kenya. All right, now you are clear. So 1 hour to the end of the sitting, the Honorable Deputy Speaker, you'll move that motion, and it will be debated by the House. Next.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Questions. Yes, clerk. Yes, the Honorable Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to ask question number 001 of 2022 under private notice to the Cabinet Secretary of Foreign and Diaspora Affairs. Number 1, what is the status of investigations into the death of Ms. Miriam Hanan Njeri of passport number BK151060, a resident of Gilgil Sub-County that occurred in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on 19th August 2022. Number 2, what steps have the government taken to facilitate the family to bringing back the remains of the 26-year-old Kenyan for a befitting send-off? Number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary state the measures the government has put in place to ensure the welfare of Kenyans working abroad, especially in Saudi Arabia? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Wangari. Yes, the Honorable Wandai.
Mr. Speaker, even as we proceed with the question and statement session, I wanted to bring to your attention that last week on Thursday, I did raise an issue here. And the issue was about the NGCDF. I've just been in quiet consultation with my colleague, the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, a while back. And what he's telling me is really discomforting. So I wanted you to, before we proceed to the rest of the questions and possible statements, that we dispense of this very, very critical and urgent matter of the statement by the Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah on the grave issue of NGCDF.
Thank you.
Yes.
Honorable Ichung'wah, I had given you time to bring a statement. Are you ready with it?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. And I had indeed indicated to the Honorable Pio and I that you had given directions, and I was hoping you'd get to it. Honorable Speaker, I have engaged with the CS National Treasury.
I haven't given you the floor. I just asked, are you ready with the statement?
I am not ready with the statement yet.
If you are not ready, can you do so tomorrow, 2:30?
In fact, Honorable Speaker, I wanted to request for your indulgence.
Yes.
We do this either tomorrow or Thursday, if it's possible.
Thursday,
so that
we have EALA elections.
And I can push the CS then to finish, because he had given a sketchy statement that I told him I was not comfortable.
I'll give you tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow.
Thank you. The Honorable Samuel Atandi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to ask question number 2 in today's order paper. And my question is by private notice. The question is directed to the National Cabinet Secretary for National Treasury and Economic Planning. Number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary avail the evaluation report with regard to the acquisition of Spar Bank Limited, indicating the individual or company that conducted it, if any, and state the amount that was paid at the point of being acquired by the Mwalimu National Sacco? Number 2, could the Cabinet Secretary state when approval was granted for the assets and liabilities purchase agreement between Spar Bank and Equity Bank? Number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary further explain the status of the bank's board membership and state whether it was legally constituted to conduct business, considering that the managing director and the other 3 board members had earlier resigned? Number 4, could the Cabinet Secretary clarify whether the Central Bank of Kenya carried out mitigation measures through funding of Mwalimu Sacco to meet the liquidation costs? And if yes, at what cost, and why the preference instead of funding the Spar Bank? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
The next question will go to the member of Mwingi Central.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to ask question number 3 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for East African Community, the ASAOS, and regional development. Number 1, considering that Kitui County and particularly Mwingi Central constituency has been experiencing prolonged drought over the last 1 year, what action is the ministry taking to ensure adequate relief food supplies to the drought-stricken residents? Number 2, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure adequate food supplies are filled under the school feeding program for both primary and secondary schools in the constituency to ensure learning goes on uninterrupted? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. To be replied before the Departmental Committee on Regional Development. The next question will go to the member for Njoro, Honorable Charity Chepkwony. I'll give it to the end of the session. The next question will go to the Honorable Rueda Obo, member for Lamu East.
Thank you, B. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to ask question 002 to the Cabinet Secretary for Road and Transport. 1, could the Cabinet Secretary outline the government policy measure being undertaken to develop marine transport in the country, and particularly in Lamu County? 2, what immediate plan has the ministry put in place to provide modern marine transport facilities, such as ferries, among others, to Lamu residents and tourists? 3, what policy measures are in place to facilitate private enterprises to develop marine transport facilities in the country and in Lamu County in particular? Thank you, B. Speaker.
Thank you, Honourable Member. That question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. The next question will go to the member for Kabuchai, Honourable Majimbo Kalasinga. If he's not in the House, the next question will go to the member for Yatta, Honourable Robert Basil.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I raise to ask question 004 of 2022 to the Cabinet Secretary for Lands. Question number 1, could the Cabinet Secretary state the number of persons classified as landless and commonly referred to as squatters in Yatta constituency? Question number 2, what measures has the ministry put in place to ensure that all squatters across the country, and in particular in Yatta constituency, are resettled, and state by when this will be done, including when they shall be issued with title deeds? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. That will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Lands. The next question will go to the member for Machakos County, Honorable Joyce Kamene. If the member is not in the House, the next question will go to the member for Kangema, Honorable Peter Kehongi.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to ask a question number 006, 2022, to the Cabinet for Agriculture and Livestock. Could the Cabinet Secretary outline the various taxes charged in the tea subsector, and in particular those directly affect tea farmers? What policy measures has the ministry put in place to reduce the various taxes imposed on farmers and other stakeholders in the tea subsector? Number 3, could the Cabinet Secretary explain the steps that the ministry will take towards ensuring the reduction of said levies, particularly those affecting tea farmers? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. That question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. I will give a second opportunity to Honorable Charity Chepkwony, if she's in the House, and Honorable Joyce Kamene, if she's in the House. If not, honorable members, allow me to recognize Mokoma Ngoge, a poet and a writer and academic, associate professor of literature at Cornell University, and son of the renowned Kenyan writer Ngoge wa Thiong'o, seated in the public gallery. On my own behalf and of the House, we welcome you to observe the proceedings of the House. Next order. Before we go to the next order, Honorable Caleb Amisi, your statement had been approved by the Speaker. Please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 44-2C, I wish to request for a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs regarding the deteriorating state of security in the country. Madam Speaker, recent events unfolding in different parts of the country show that insecurity has increased. Incidences of robbery with violence, mugging, assaults, and the tragic loss of lives being witnessed have spread fear, panic, and apprehension all over the country, especially in urban areas. Concerns have emerged on efficiency, capacity, and operations of the National Police Service in carrying out their mandate, especially that of ensuring the security of its citizens. Criminal activities have increased with declining performance of the national economy, and people in general have little confidence in the effectiveness of the law enforcement efforts in controlling the rampant crime. Kenyans no longer feel safe to move about freely within the central business district of Nairobi and other urban cities. Madam Speaker, it is expected that with the recent appointment of the Inspector General of Police, long-standing measures will be instituted to curb the crime situation. Madam Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the Chairperson of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs on the following. Number 1, could the Chairperson explain what measures have been put in place to cope with the rising state of insecurity within Nairobi and in the country? Number 2, whether the officers working to curb crime are adequately facilitated. Number 3, what measures has the Ministry of Interior and National Administration taken to ensure the number of officers within Nairobi County and its environs is commensurate to the population? Number 4, what measures have the Ministry of Interior and the National Administration put in place to alleviate the psychological effects caused by the enduring burden of stress to those who have lost loved ones on crime? And lastly, what strategies have been put in place by the Ministry of Interior and National Administration to address the increasing insecurity in the rural areas, including the rampant cattle rustling in the northern parts of the country? Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. This statement will go to the Chair, the Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs. I don't know how long you'll need. Where is the Chair? Vice or a member to undertake? If there is no member in the House, the Leader of Majority, Honorable Protas, is that Honorable Protas? Are you a member? Give Honorable Protas the microphone.
Yes, Madam Speaker. I'm a member of that committee.
What did you say?
Madam Speaker will respond in 2 weeks.
2 weeks' time. That
Yes.
is good. That will be taken in 2 weeks. The next chance I will indulge honorable members, because I know we are also doing a lot of vetting activities in the committee. So this question, I'll give the final chance to Honorable Chepkwenyi of Njoro.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for granting me this opportunity to ask my question. And my sincere apologies, we are vetting today for our PSs. Allow me to ask my question, Madam Speaker, which is 001-2022. Could the Cabinet Secretary state when the government will lift the moratorium on issuance of title deeds in Nakuru, Kericho, Bomet, Narok counties, and specifically Joro constituency? What steps is the ministry taking to fast track the issuance of title deeds in Mount Narok, Mauche, Naiswet, Joro, Lare, Kingo wards in Joro constituency? Madam Speaker, thank you, though I have seen they forgot to put one of my questions.
Honorable member, the question is as approved. This question will be replied before the Departmental Committee on Lands. The next statement will go to the Deputy Speaker. To the Deputy Speaker, Honorable Gladys Bose.
Stand pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 179-14, I rise to notify the House by way of statement that the duly elected chairperson and vice chairpersons of committees following the recent elections of committees of the House. Honorable Speaker, on Thursday, the 27th October 2022, the House adopted the report of the committee on selection and on placement of members to committees of the House. Consequently, and pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 179, committees conducted and concluded elections of chairpersons and vice chairpersons upon their constitution within the 7-day period as approved by the Speaker. In this regard, Honorable Speaker, I wish to notify the House that all the departmental committees, audit and appropriations and other select committees have elected leadership as follows. Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Affairs. Chairperson, the Honorable Gabriel Koshal Tongoya, MP. Vice Chairperson, the Honorable Dido Ali Raso, MP. The Departmental Committee on Agriculture and Livestock. Chairperson is the Honorable John Mutunga Kinyudia, MP. The Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Leonard Brighton Yegon, MP. 3, Departmental Committee on Blue Economy and Irrigation. The Chairperson is the Honorable Kangogo Bowen, MP. And the Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Marwa Kitayama Maisori, MP. 4, Departmental Committee on Communication and Information and Innovation. The Chairperson is the Honorable John Kiare Waweru, MP. The Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Alpha Ondieki Miruka, MP. 5, Departmental Committee on Defense, Intelligence and Foreign Relations. The Chairperson is the Honorable Nelson Koech, MP. The Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Major Retired Bashir Abdullahi, MP. 6, the Departmental Committee on Education. The Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Julius Kibiwot Meli, MP. And the Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Moses Malulu Ijendi, MP. 7, the Departmental Committee on Energy. The Chairperson is the Honorable Vincent Musioka. The Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Aramat Lemanken, MP. 8, the Departmental Committee on Environment, Forestry and Mining. The Chairperson is the Honorable David Gikaria, MP. And the Vice Chairperson is the Honorable Charles Kamuren, MP. 9, the Departmental Committee on Finance and National Planning. The chairperson is the Honorable CPA Francis Kuria Kimani, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Ambassador Benjamin Kipkurui Lagat, MP. 10, the Departmental Committee on Health. The chairperson is the Honorable Dr. Robert Pukose, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Patrick Munene Ndwiga, MP. 11, the Departmental Committee on Housing, Urban Planning, and Public Works. The chairperson is the Honorable Johanna Ngeno Kibiegon, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Murwidhyanya Rindikiri, MP. 12, the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs. The chairperson is the Honorable George Gitonga Murugara, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Ikomas Mwengi Mutuse, MP. 13, the Departmental Committee on Labor. The chairperson is the Honorable Eric Muchangi Njiru, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Fabian Mule Kule, MP. 14, the Departmental Committee on Lands. The chairperson is the Honorable Joash Nyamoko, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Jane Kihara, MP. 15, the Departmental Committee on Regional Development. The chairperson is the Honorable Peter Lachakapong, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Mary Wanjoroge Wamaua, MP. The Departmental Committee on Social Protection. The chairperson is the Honorable Alice Wamboi Nganga, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Hilary Kiplagat Kosgei, MP. 17, the Departmental Committee on Sports and Culture. The chairperson is the Honorable Daniel Sitati Wanyama, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable James Gidua Wamashukuru, MP. 18, the Departmental Committee on Tourism and Wildlife. The chairperson is the Honorable Jafeth Kareka Mbuku, CBS MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable John Juguna Wanjiko, MP. 19, the Departmental Committee on Trade, Industry, and Cooperatives. The chairperson is the Honorable James Gakuya Mwangi, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Marianne Chebet Keitany, MP. 20, the Departmental Committee on Transport and Infrastructure. The chairperson is the Honorable G.K. George Kariuki, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Didimas Wekesa Baraza, MP. 21, Public Accounts Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable John Buddy, CBS, MP. And the vice chairperson, I stand corrected. I'll repeat. 21, Public Accounts Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable John Buddy, EGH, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Nicholas Scott Tindi Mwale, MP. 22, Special Funds Accounts Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Fatuma Z. Mohammed, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Abdul Rahim Dawood, HSC, MP. 23, the Committee on Delegated Legislation. The chairperson is the Honorable Samuel Chepkonga, MP. And the vice chairperson is the Honorable Gishimu Githinji, MP. 24, the National Government Constituencies Development Fund Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Musa Sirma, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Kasim Sawa Tandaza, MP. 25, the Constitutional Implementation Oversight Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Gadoni Wamoshomba, MP. And the vice chairperson is the Honorable William Kamket, MP. 26, the Committee on Implementation. The chairperson is the Honorable Raphael B.S. Wanjala, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Rose Museo Mumo, MP. 27, Diaspora Affairs and Migrant Workers Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Haika Lydia Mzigi, MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Simon Kingara, MP. 28, Committee on Regional Integration. The chairperson is the Honorable Wanjiko Muhia, MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Sala Yakub Farah, MP. 29, Members, Services and Facilities Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Stephen Karani MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Faisal Badar Salim MP. 30, the Committee on Parliamentary Broadcasting and Library. The chairperson is the Honorable Daniel Ipuyu Nanok MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Kiragu Shege MP. 31, Budget and Appropriations Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Ndidi Nyoro MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Mary Emase MP. 32, Committee on Public Petitions. The chairperson is the Honorable Nimrod Mbai MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Janet Sitiene MP. Public Investments Committee on Governance and Education. The chairperson is the Honorable Jack Wamboka MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Naisula Lesuda MP. 34, the Public Investments Committee on Commercial Affairs and Energy. The chairperson is the Honorable David Kosing MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Lillian Gogo MP. 35, Public Investments Committee on Social Services and Administration and Agriculture. The chairperson is the Honorable Emmanuel Wangwe MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Caleb Hamisi MP. 36, the Decentralized Funds Accounts Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Gideon Mulyungi MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Gertrude Beyu MP. 37, the Committee on National Cohesion and Equal Opportunity. The chairperson is the Honorable Adan Yusuf Haji MP. The vice chairperson is the Honorable Liza Chelule Chepkorir MP. 38, the Public Debt and Privatization Committee. The chairperson is the Honorable Omar Shure MP, and the vice chairperson is the Honorable Honorable Dr. Makali Mulu MP. In conclusion, Honorable Speaker, the House is aware of the immense responsibilities bestowed on the Speaker of the National Assembly and the Chairperson of the Parliamentary Service Commission, the Chairperson of the House Business Committee, the Chairperson of the Committee on Appointments, the Chairperson of the Powers and Privileges Committee, and the Chairperson of the Procedure and House Rules Committee, among many other duties. In this regard, the Liaison Committee is therefore requesting, with your kind permission, to designate the following honorable members to represent the Speaker during the meetings of the Liaison Committee. 1, the Honorable Omboko Malemba MP to represent the House Business Committee. 2, the Honorable Farah Maalim to represent the Speaker in the Powers and Privileges Committee. 3, the Honorable Martha Wangari MP to represent the Speaker in the Procedure and House Rules Committee. In this regard, Honorable Speaker, your office, Honorable Speaker, the Office of the Speaker will on regular and continuous basis be appraised on all the undertakings of the respective committees. Finally, Honorable Speaker, may I take this opportunity to congratulate all the honorable members who have been elected and vested with the responsibilities of being chairpersons and vice chairpersons of committees in this National Assembly. I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, the Deputy Speaker. Honorable members, allow me to recognize the presence of Turi Secondary School students from Molo, Nakuru, seated in the public gallery. On behalf of myself and the House, you're welcome to observe the proceedings of the House. What is out of order, Honorable Mbadi?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I appreciate the communication from the Deputy Speaker, who is also supposed to lead liaison committee. But I was expecting to hear from her when the liaison committee is going to conduct induction so that we can start work. When we wanted to start our activities as a committee, we were advised that there will be need for the liaison committee first to have a meeting or an induction for those members who have never been chairs or who have no experience in some of these activities, that some chairs who are coming in for the first time in their entire life as chairs. Some are even the first term members of parliament. So when is this going to happen so that we can start work as committees? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Speaker, I appreciate the question that has been asked by Honorable Mbadi, MP, EGH. I think I wish to confirm that the liaison committee shall be meeting starting tomorrow at 11:30. We will be meeting every Wednesday, but our inaugural meeting will be tomorrow, Wednesday at 11:30, and then thereafter we shall plan the inductions and preparations for the work ahead. Thank you.
And honorable members, those in the liaison committee, we already have administrative communication channels for the meetings that can be done even after here. The next statement will be done on behalf of Honorable Owen Bayer, and it will be done by Honorable Paul Katana Kahindi.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. A request for statement regarding disbursement of National Government Constituency Development Fund. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 44.2C, I would like to request a statement from the chairperson of the Departmental Committee on National Government Constituency Development Fund regarding the disbursement of constituency development funds by the Ministry of National Treasury. Honorable Speaker, the Constituency Development Fund positively impacts the constituents by ironing out the regional imbalances to achieve rapid socio-economic development at the constituency level, whereas the Supreme Court of Kenya pronounced its judgment on 8th of August 2022, declaring the Constituency Development Act of 2013 as unconstitutional. It is imperative to note that the pronouncement does not affect the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015. The National Treasury is yet to disburse funds as approved by the National Government Constituency Development Fund Board for bursaries, allocation, and development of the constituencies as mandated in the National Government Constituency Development Fund Act of 2015. In this regard, the National Treasury should note that the NGCDF Act of 2015 remain in force. Honorable Speaker, it is against this background that I seek a statement from the chairperson of the National Committee on National Government and Constituency Development Fund as follows. Could the chairperson explain when the Minister of National Treasury intends to disburse the funds on the constituencies? 2, could the chairperson further establish how much of the Constituency Development Fund's budget is still unused in the National Treasury? Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
Signed among the nation involved, and I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that there are a number of issues that committee recommended, and one of them was to amend the East African Legislative Assembly elections to enhance the role of the Joint Select Committee. Honorable Speaker, Honorable my colleague in the report touched on the issue of the members who applied, and the membership that applied indeed was 348, others having made multiple applications, and having the presiding officers having checked the applications, they found that there were 287. Remember, Honorable Speaker, this was done by the presiding officers, and the Joint Committee was not involved. So those are some of the amendments that we also felt as a committee that the procedure should involve the members of the Joint Committee from the onset, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to say that these members who have applied for East African Legislative Assembly, Honorable Speaker, a number of them have been our colleagues in the port houses. We've interacted with a number of them. And I want to say, Honorable Speaker, I know the key players on these appointments are the parties, Honorable Speaker. So having been given the list of 15 members from the one of the parties, and the other party is giving us a number of giving us 9 membership, Honorable Speaker, where we are supposed to have 4 and 5 approval. I want to say, Honorable Speaker, that it is upon the members now to check upon the entire list and come up with the members whom they feel they will represent this nation in the East African Assembly. I beg to support. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, I now propose the question, which is that pursuant to the provisions of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community and Rule 13.5 of the East African Legislative Assembly election of members of the Assembly rules, the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of the East African Legislative Assembly, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 15th November 2022. Members, you may now make your contributions. Senator Ojienda.
Mr. Speaker, sir, I just want to thank you for giving me this opportunity to contribute to the motion. Mr. Speaker, the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community in 1999 is an important treaty, and the treaty as contemplates, Mr. Speaker, sir, that within the frame of the treaty, right from the customs union, Mr. Speaker, sir, that there shall be a common market, a monetary union, and finally a federation. I know, Mr. Speaker, sir, that you have served as Minister for East African Community, and I know that you, like anyone else, is yearning to ensure that we complete the 5 stages and that we see a federation for East Africa. Granted, Mr. Speaker, sir, that every region of the 7-member union, Mr. Speaker, sir, has challenges. Mr. Speaker, sir.
What is your point of order, Senator Cheriot?
Apologies to my neighbor, the good Senator of Kisumu. But Mr. Speaker, I rise pursuant to Standing Order number 111, limitation of debate, that the Senate may, on a motion made by any senator in accordance with this standing order, impose a limit in respect of debate of any particular motion or bill by allotting a limited period of time for such debate, by limiting time during which senators may speak in such a debate, or by imposing such limitations. The reason I do this, Speaker, is that you have already allocated 5:30 a time to do the adjournment motion of Senator Enokio Wambua. It is now 4:22. We have to do this motion, and we have a further motion, Mr. Speaker, providing for the election day, specific election day on Thursday, which is before. All that we need to compress and be concluded before that 5:30, Mr. Speaker. That being the case, Mr. Speaker, I wish to request that you limit debate to the members. If members can agree, actually, that maybe 2 or 3 only on one side, 2 or 3 on the other. But then again, because I want to be specific on time, you limit it to maybe 3 minutes per person, Mr. Speaker. I'll really appreciate. I want to ask Senator Medu to second me on that.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I second. Honorable Senators, I now put the question. The debate on this motion be limited to 2 minutes per 2 minutes. 2 minutes per senator. Honorable Senators, I think the move of the motion has actually indicated that you'll have adequate time to debate on this matter. So let us limit it to 2 minutes per senator. Senator Ojenda, I'm yet to conclude on this matter. Okay, I have put the question and we are yet to vote on it. So as many as of that opinion say aye. Aye. As many of the contrary opinion say nay. The ayes have it. 2 minutes per senator. Professor, proceed.
Let me just spend my time wisely. The reason why I seek to contribute on this motion, Mr. Speaker, sir, is because, as you are aware, Mr. Speaker, sir, I previously served as president of the East African Law Society. And I was part of the drafting of the protocol of the Customs Union. I contributed professionally, and I've been part of the process. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, what I wanted to say is that the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly, which is one of the arms contemplated by the treaty, the summit, the ESCJ, and now EALA, is a very important organ. I was just going to urge members to ensure that they vote for competent people to represent this region in that assembly. I have today, Mr. Speaker, sir, received a lot of interest from individuals who want to go to that assembly, Mr. Speaker, sir. And I know very, very competent ones, Mr. Speaker, sir, that we shall vote for, Mr. Speaker, sir. I urge, Mr. Speaker, sir, that this House, in considering who to vote for Winnie Odinga. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir.
Class, can you put the timer on so that we limit time to 2 minutes? The Honorable Mungatana.
Mr. Speaker, very quickly, I wanted to make this point that, Mr. Speaker, my small experience from the Pan-African Parliament is that when Kenya stands to speak, people want to hear what Kenya is about to say. Mr. Speaker, the delegation that has gone there has represented us very well. Mr. Speaker, my point is that the people we are going to choose to go and sit in that East African Parliament, they must be the very best of us. And they must be people who have experience, Mr. Speaker, because we don't want people who are going there and then they are going to start learning how even to address the House. Mr. Speaker, that's an international, it's a regional parliament. And I'm going to urge very, very strongly, Mr. Speaker, that we send people who have already served in this Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. These people will go there and give us good quality debates, good quality representation, worthy of the title Republic of Kenya. Let us not send people who have no experience just because they have political connection. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Senator Osotsi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. Mr. Speaker, reading through the report, the committee has recommended that the rules needs to be amended so that we have clarity on the role of the joint committee, because the rules talk about presiding officers. So I hope the relevant committee will take it up and make sure that the rules are amended appropriately. Also, the provision on the withdrawal of candidates is not clearly stipulated. The committee has recommended that that be looked at. Mr. Speaker, Many people have talked about competence. But I think one important qualification is that those who come near the borders should be considered. For example, those who come near the border, like Victoria and Tanzania, or Western and Uganda, and those who come from northern part of Kenya with Somali, those who come from Turkana with the southern Sudan, they must be considered because those are people who go through challenges which needs to be addressed under the framework of EALA. So I recommend that we vote for individuals who come from regions which have challenges with the borders and with the East African community. I also encourage members, please vote according to your own conscience. We are told that some people will go to a PG and a list will be given to them. I think this country is democratic. Let people vote freely and vote for the people they want to vote for, and not to be coerced to vote for particular individuals because the party has given them direction to do that. We must exercise democracy.
Senator Onsoti, your time is up, Senator. Thank you. Thank you. The Honorable Senator Veronica Duarte. Your microphone is off, Senator.
There is a problem. Okay, now that's okay. Mr. Speaker, sir, I first want to thank the Joint Committee for the good job they have done and presenting the report that has been brought to the floor of the House. Mr. Speaker, sir, all the candidates who have been shortlisted in that report should be considered as equal and qualified to serve and fit to serve within the East African Legislative Assembly. The fact that a candidate has not served in any parliament before should never act as a bar towards them ascending to the East African Legislative Assembly. So, Mr. Speaker, sir, I would urge members to vote guided by their own conscience, knowing that the list of the members who should be voted in to serve in that assembly should, number one, have a diversity within the Kenyan communities. It should also take into account gender considerations. It should be balanced in terms of gender. And I would actually encourage the members to consider this time around accepting women more, much more women than men, because all the other parliaments have more men than women. Thank you.
Senator Faki.
Asante Mheshimiwa Spika kwa kunipa fursa hii kuunga mkono ripoti ambayo imeletwa bungeni ya uteuzi wa wagombea wa ubunge wa East Africa Mashariki. Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa hakika wote ambao wameteuliwa ni watu ambao wana tajiriba, lakini ni vizuri tuchague watu ambao watakuwa na uwezo wa kusongeza mbele bunge hili la East Africa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiangalia katika zile taasisi za bunge za East African Cooperation, mahakama ya East Africa, Mheshimiwa Spika, imefanya maamuzi ambayo yamesaidia masuala ya haki za binadamu na masuala ya human rights katika maeneo yetu kwa sehemu kubwa kuliko yale ambayo yameweza kufanywa na bunge hili. Na yote imetokamana na masuala kwamba wale wanaokwenda kutuwakilisha ni watu ambao wanakwenda kutafuta kazi, sio watu wanaokwenda kuangalia yale masuala ambayo yanaangaziwa na bunge hili. Mheshimiwa Spika, nimebahatika kusafiri kwenda Zanzibar na Pemba mwezi uliokwisha, na nikaona kwamba kuna mambo mengi ambayo bunge hili linaweza kuangazia ili kurahisisha biashara baina ya Kenya na Tanzania, ama biashara baina ya nchi tatu nchi saba za Afrika Mashariki, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hivyo wale ambao tutawachagua, Mheshimiwa Spika, siku ya Alhamisi, lazima wawe ni watu ambao wana maono ya kupeleka bunge hili mbele, sio kutafutia watu kazi hata kama mtu ndio mara yake ya kwanza kuchaguliwa Mheshimiwa Spika, lakini ikiwa ana maono ya kupeleka bunge hili mbele, anafaa kupewa kazi hiyo. Kuna wengi ambao wamechaguliwa na Mheshimiwa katika bunge hili la Senate mwaka huu hawajakuwa maseneta, lakini tumeona zile kazi ambazo wameweza kufanya zinaridhisha kwamba wamechaguliwa kusaidia nchi hii kwenda mbele. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Tawa Matinga.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir. I also like to support. We know that when we talk about East African community, the thoughts of Pan-Africanism are allies. I would wish to ask the members also when they go to elections that they should look, and I want to repeat this, look at people who will be able to put the face of Kenya in that parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Manzo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank all members in this committee who assisted me as a co-chair to make this report. And Mr. Speaker, my apologies to the House. I was not there, and Senator Beatrice Ogola was very kind to move it on my behalf. Mr. Speaker, I had to go to my county having a visitor in the name of Bill Gates, who one time when in Seattle going as parliament, I visited his office, made an invitation, and luckily he came to Kenya, and therefore my apologies to the House. The main issue in this particular report we found could be ideal for consideration in future. First of all, whatever happens to a single state happened to all member states. And secondly, one time when this process was abused by the state of Kenya, there was a court case at the Eastern African Court of Justice. And I was lucky to be one of the lawyers there. And the court directed and ended up with what we have now. That's why we have to choose out of three. Instead of select, there has to be an election, Mr. Speaker. But then we have to balance gender, youth, and also continuity, Mr. Speaker. One of the problems with the Kenyan election has been that we remove everybody, and then we have no institutional memory in EALA. So I'll urge members while making a vote and supporting this to look at that consideration so that we can have continuity in the Eastern African Legislative Assembly. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Sigei.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the report. And I would love, Mr. Speaker, from the very onset to indicate to the House that the East Africa Legislative Assembly has attracted a good number of people who are, I believe, all qualified. From the report, Mr. Speaker, 348 people applied, 69 were nominated, 9 are required to be elected tomorrow. I believe, Mr. Speaker, this House will be capable of picking from among the list that we've been given people who are qualified, who will push the agenda of Kenya in the East Africa Legislative Assembly. I urge the members from this House to do that which is objective tomorrow when it comes to voting, so that we send the team on Thursday. Pardon me, Mr. Speaker, the election will be on Thursday, I believe. And Mr. Speaker, I was giving an indication that I urge this House to send to the East Africa Legislative Assembly people who are qualified to advance the interest of this country. And Mr. Speaker, as I conclude on my support to the report, the committee has proposed that a framework for formal campaigns be placed in the 2017 rules for this particular position. And I urge that the House, once it is done with the election process, can also formulate a process where candidates can be able to have formal processes to conduct their campaigns, so that they make it easy, so that we also can get an opportunity to interrogate whatever they are seeking to go and do for us as a country in the East Africa Legislative Assembly. Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. Hata hii haifanyi. Thank you. Fine. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this motion. And I want to urge the members to make sure that we actually appoint, or rather vote, for the right candidates, because it is important that whoever we send to East Africa, they will represent the face of the country, and there would be people who are experienced, committed, with a constitutional memory, whereby they would be able to move the EALA forward. Mr. Speaker, again, it's important to give opportunity to all the applicants, because there should not be barriers whereby somebody, if it's connected to any political affiliation or any political kingpin, for them to be denied the opportunity. It is important, if somebody qualifies, we are all grown-ups, or they are all grown-ups, once you are over 18, you have your own life. So people should not be denied opportunities, or their dreams to be shattered because simply they are connected to a certain politician. So please, Mr. Speaker, I want to urge the House to make sure they give the opportunity to everybody who deserves the opportunity to be able to serve in EALA, Mr. Speaker. I think with those few remarks, I support. Thank you.
Senator Chirangi.
Mr. Speaker, it's working. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this report, and I think in the interest of the House and many issues that have been raised. One is with the Committee on EAC. I think there is a committee that concerns itself. They need to pick it up, some of these recommendations going into the future, so that we can ensure the process of EALA become less tedious within the law. Mr. Speaker, finally, I want to I've heard my colleagues from the minority side, as Azimio One Kenya Alliance. I think he just left the chamber, Mr. Speaker. He is alleging that that members of Kenya Kwanza at some point will be given who to vote for. My question is simple. When you look at this report, which is the worst democracy and corruption, Mr. Speaker, if you can bring your own daughter to be elected to EALA, or your own son? Winnie Odinga wants to be an EALA member simply because of the second name, just like Kalonzo Musyoka's son. They are here. They should stop lecturing us about democracy, where they practice the worst form of democracy and corruption. If it comes to voting, I will not allow cronyism and nepotism to go through, because that is not the spirit of this republic, Mr. Speaker. When you look at the list of Kenya Kwanza, Mr. Speaker, it is only hustlers, people who are from bottom up, that we have nominated to go to EALA to represent this country, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to ask the One Kenya, Azimio One Kenya Alliance, to stop peddling lies to Kenyans that they are democratic. They are not. They are corrupt and nepotic and cronyism, and we shall not allow that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Senator Hezena.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, every time I rise, the expectation is that I'll be speaking for the marginalized people in this country. But I want to highlight, as regards the EALA nomination list, that the most marginalized group of people in this country turns out to be the youth. And it is very unfair for a sitting member of the Senate to stand up and say that experience is required to have sat in Parliament before for you to participate in the East African Legislative Assembly. I want to strongly refute that, and I hope that this House, each member will interrogate themselves and remember that these very youth who are seeking for these positions have no experience, and next time could turn out to be their own children. I believe that whoever we are going to send to the East African Legislative Assembly should be someone who is knowledgeable, someone who is eloquent, someone who has a vast knowledge of the East African affairs and matters, and somebody who understands the importance of discipline and aggressiveness and the value that the East African community brings when we have a common goal that will consolidate our interests. Senator Cherargei, please stop interrupting.
Senator Zena, do not be disrupted by another senator. Leave it to me.
Thank you.
I'll protect you. Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For Senator Cherargei, I believe Honorable Speaker should be the first to speak about the young people getting opportunities more than those who have experience. Having been a young member of the Senate in the last term as a young naive boy from the hills of Nandi, and the opportunity bestowed upon him turned him into the brave man who is always in.
Honorable Senator, your time is up. Senator Boni Kalole.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have listened to members and have agreed with them that we need competence, proven competence at EALA. You and I have been there in an executive role, and you know the critical role played by this assembly, and countries like Rwanda and Uganda bring very good members of parliament. Let me tell you, I've listened to Senator Osotsi and I sympathize with him. He's saying that a parliamentary group meeting that is going to discuss this matter should not be entertained. Poor him. Senator Osotsi, in November 2006, Professor Peter Anyang' Nyong'o and 10 other leaders belonging to the Rainbow Coalition took President Mwai Kibaki to the East African Court of Justice. And the ruling was given in Anyang' Nyong'o's favor that no political party within a coalition can be locked out. That was the ruling, November 2006. So, heads of coalitions must sit together and agree so that the members we take to East Africa, Wiper must be there, Jubilee should be there, ODM should be there on that side. And on our side, we should reflect our composition. And this is why I want to urge ODM, if you have not held consultations with your colleagues, you're going to give us problems. We'll be ruled out of order by that court. So we need that tomorrow's example by us be seen as a value adding. The only thing I'll request is, because I'll be voting for you, I'll go by the ruling of the East African Court of Justice. I'll make sure that the people I vote for, I'll give some to ODM, some to Wiper, and some to Jubilee. And on the UDA side, because we have almost 90% majority, the law allows us as UDA to take all the UDA members of parliament, and I'll therefore be guided, and I urge members to be guided by the geographical consideration, so that the entire community of Kenya is also in East Africa. I support.
Thank you, Senator Wambua.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also stand in support of the report, and hasten to say that, Mr. Speaker, there is a lot of consultation going around, which is healthy. I mean, let those people who are interested in representing our republic in EALA lobby and canvass and caucus. And there's no formula for doing it, Mr. Speaker. People will canvass in the best way that they know how to. And at the end of the day, Mr. Speaker, the thing that we must all be very careful about, I think, is what Senator Alwale has said. That we need to take to Arusha a team of 9 members who will represent 2 things, Mr. Speaker. 1, the face of this country, and 2, Mr. Speaker, the competence levels of representation of this country. And Mr. Speaker, this is not to say that the youth should not get an opportunity. They must get an opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it will be remembered that at some point all of us were first-time senators or members of the National Assembly. So we cannot say that one of the criteria for electing people to EALA should be people who are previously served in a parliament. The Speaker, people are committed enough, they lobby enough, they canvass enough, they caucus enough. The Speaker, let the best team go to represent Kenya in Arusha. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Tobiko.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, let me arise to thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report of the committee, that they have done a good job with the names that they have presented to both houses to be considered for the EALA Parliament. Mr. Speaker, let me say, all those who are in that list are Kenyans who can represent this country. But Mr. Speaker, it's good that as we go to vote, we consider the face of this country, we consider diversity, we consider regional balance, and we also consider competence, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we consider all categories, it's also good that people who are physically challenged are considered, because if we have seen them in the list. The youths are considered because we have seen them in the list. And the women of this country, there is a fair number in that list. And as my SG said, it will be good if for the first time we can have majority of women in the EALA Parliament, because we have seen the women of this country are also competent, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as we consider many factors, it is good that we consider that there are communities particularly that cut across the borders of the East African countries. You'll find a community like the Maasai. They are both in Tanzania and they are in Kenya. You'll find, I think the Pokot. There are many communities that cut across, and it will be good that such communities are given a chance, because as they go to East Africa, they will bring unity of purpose in all our countries, Mr. Speaker. There are aspects that affect those communities in Tanzania. Off the mic. Mr. Speaker, it is also good to consider if it is trade.
Honorable Senator, your time is up. Senator Ledama.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise to support the report on the Joint Committee on the elections of members to serve in the East African Parliament. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to remind us that this is an extension of this Parliament. The men and women, and I'm happy to see that both coalitions have considered at least 5 women on that side, 5 women on this side. I hope that we can send many women to be able to represent us. I want to support I share the sentiments of my sister, that it would be imperative for us to look at communities that share boundaries so that we can be able to enhance cohesion between these two countries. the purpose of the East African Legislation Assembly is to be able to foresee a future development where this country, Mr. Speaker, that's 53 seconds. Doesn't I have a minute, yeah? For the future of the community, so that at least eventually we can have one country which will be called the East African country. And that is going to be able to help us enhance development. Mr. Speaker, some of the things that we'll be talking about in future is an introduction of future parliaments or future committees that will look at the challenges that we go through. So I want to beseech my colleagues that on Thursday, let us look at the list entirely. Let us take into consideration those issues that we've discussed here, and also plead with my colleague that at least every Kenyan has got a right. It doesn't matter. We never chose to be born by rich families or poor families. We are all Kenyans. When we come here, let us respect each other. Let us give each other an opportunity, and God will select the best person to represent us. Finally, remember that whoever we send to the East African legislation will be representing this parliament. It is an extension of this parliament, and that is why it is us, the members of parliament, who are electing our colleagues to go and represent us there. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Robert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the report of the Joint Committee. And as we've looked at the report, the people selected by the Joint Committee are people representative generally, under the circumstance of the country and the regions. This is an opportunity for us as Parliament to be able to really help in fine-tuning what the committee has done. The committee has done a fantastic job, and in fine-tuning what the committee has done through voting, it is very critical that we don't let down the committee, because the committee has really their youth in this proposal. There are, women, there are people with experience, there are people without experience, and they're all there. And with that spirit of the committee, it is an opportunity for us to be able to select. Yes, the proposals has been given by different political coalitions, but as members of parliament here, allow people to lobby, as what we have gone through in terms of election. But in as far as even considering the lobbying, we should not miss the opportunity to be able to see through and make sure that we maintain the same balance as done. I rise to support. Thank you.
Senator Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I also rise to support the report, and I am drawn through this report to Article 19 of the Constitution, and I'm going to read sub-Article 1 and 2. Critically, sub-Article 1 says that the Bill of Rights is an integral part of Kenya's democratic state and is the framework for social, economic, and cultural policies. Sub-Article 2 says that the purpose of recognizing and protecting human rights and fundamental freedoms is to preserve the dignity of individuals and communities and to promote social justice and the realization of the potential of all human beings. Mr. Speaker, the day we attempt to suspend these articles, whether by just words or by mere
Senator
political rhetoric,
consult in Lawton.
the day we attempt to suspend this article, Mr. Speaker, whether by words or political rhetorics, is the day we will condemn all our children to condemnation without relief. I am very disappointed at a senator who has spoken very passionately, profiling sons and daughters of other senior politicians in these countries with regards to this, when we know that when we talk about dynasties today, by virtue that you've gotten an opportunity to be in this house, you are also, you are a politician, and your sons and children will be treated to the same measure that you put. And therefore, I request that as we consider this election coming in on Thursday, please, let us consider people on the basis of people who can advance the economic opportunities for our people in the East African market. If you talk about somebody like Winnie Odinga, you might look at the daughter of Raila Amolo Odinga. But Winnie Odinga is also a qualified Drexel University double major graduate. So please respect the Constitution. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker.
Senator Anyeni.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the report by the Joint Committee and also urge honorable members in this House that the shortlisted candidates meet the requirements, but we need to shed off the narrative of these slots being a Bureau of Employment. This House is going to be judged by citizens across the East African community countries by the kind of people we are going to send to that House. Secondly, someone like me would never have made it to this Senate hadn't I been given a platform. So I beg to request that members consider young people, women. So long as you have the capability and qualifications needed, you fit the bill to be in that House. Thank you.
Honorable Senators, and I put the question that pursuant Sir, Honorable Senators, at this juncture, I will invite the mover to reply.
Honorable Speaker, I stand here a very proud member of the Joint Select Committee of the two houses. Honorable Speaker, of note is the fact that this committee took into consideration a lot of comments that I've heard from the honorable senators on the floor. Honorable Speaker, as I stand here, I wonder about certain reference to daughters or sons or nepotism or cronism. Honorable Speaker, this was an advert that was given to Kenyans. And Honorable Speaker, we invited applicants from Kenyans, willing Kenyans who are interested. And Honorable Speaker, those are the applicants that we received. And we end up with the final names that we'll be presenting to this House. But Honorable Speaker, are we saying as senators that our children or daughters or whoever they are will never go for seats that they are passionate about? Honorable Speaker, I grew up as a daughter of a teacher. And Honorable Speaker, your parents are the first mentors that you have in the society. I thus became a teacher and a number of my siblings. Are we saying as a house that the Teacher Service Commission was wrong to give me an opportunity to be a teacher? Honorable Speaker, are we saying like the Honorable Senator Boni Alwala is a doctor? Would it be wrong for his son or daughter to be a doctor? Honorable Speaker, let us give chance to willing Kenyans that have made applications and have met the requirements that were so placed. The committee took into consideration regional balance, gender and youth, and shades of opinion also have been taken care of by political parties. I reply, Honorable Speaker.
Honorable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 84-2, I do make a determination that this matter does not affect counties and therefore proceed to put the question. That pursuant to the provisions of Article 50 of the Treaty for the Establishment of the East African Community and Rules 13.5 of the East African Legislative Assembly, election of members of the Assembly rules, the Senate adopts the report of the Joint Select Committee on the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly on its consideration of the nomination papers of the duly nominated candidates for election as members of the East African Legislative Assembly laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 15th November 2022. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of the contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it.
Next order, clerk. Order number 10, motion, approval for the Senate to hold a morning sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022.
Majority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I beg to move that pursuant to the provisions of Article... Yes, sorry, I take that again, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move a motion that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order number 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purpose of the election of the members of the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. Mr. Speaker, if you recall the 2017, or rather, I think it was 2017 actually, election, we voted late into the night, and you understand, not primarily because of us as a Senate, because it's only 67 of us. So election and the counting, the whole process of ballot casting and counting doesn't take more than an hour on our side. But on the side of the National Assembly, they counted actually late into the night. And you know that the eventual winners is a joint tally of the votes that one gets in both houses. So we need to conclude our process so that our colleagues in the National Assembly can also carry, I'm sure they also have a similar motion. They'll begin voting on that day in the morning, so that by as late as 3, 4, 5 o'clock, or even earlier than that, we have known who are the Kenya representatives for the next 5 years to this East African Legislative Assembly. So this is very much a procedural motion, Mr. Speaker, which I want to ask Senator Boni Halwale to second.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this being purely a procedural mission, whose reasons have been ably justified by the leader of the minority, I wish to support the leader of the majority. Because of his height, I forgot that he's here. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I wish to second him and request that the House support the motion on both sides. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Senators, I now propose the question that pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purposes of the election of members to the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. You may now proceed, Honourable Senators, to make your contributions. Honourable Senators, pursuant to Standing Order 84-2, I do make a determination that this motion does not affect counties and therefore proceed to put the question. That pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 34-4B, the Senate resolves to hold a sitting on Thursday, 17th November 2022, commencing at 9:30 a.m. and terminating not later than 2:15 p.m. for purposes of the election of members of the East African Legislative Assembly and any other business as may be approved by the Senate Business Committee. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Will as many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. Next order.
Order number 11, motion, effects of upstream activities on the River Tana to the residents of the Tana Delta.
The Honorable Senator Danson Mungatana, kindly move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move this motion that aware that water is a fundamental resource to life, livelihood, food security, and sustainable development and economic good, which is critical for the sustainable development of the country. Further aware that the River Tana plays an important role in the lives of the communities living along its banks, including Garissa and Tana River counties, whose main economic activities are livestock keeping, farming, and fishing. Recognizing Article 43(1)(d) of the Constitution provides that every Kenyan has the right to clean and safe water in adequate quantities, noting that the residents of the Tana River County have perennially suffered from acute effects of flooding and inadequate supply of water to its residents and their livestock, cognizant that the challenge of flooding has predominantly been caused by KenGen's release of huge amounts of water from the Seven Forks dams, which combine with rainwater from the highlands. Further cognizant that the hoarding of water at the Seven Forks dams and other significant upstream activities such as irrigation and small-scale dams limits the amount of water that flows downstream through River Tana, significantly affecting agricultural activities in irrigation schemes such as Bura, Galole, and other small-scale irrigation schemes in the Tana Delta as a result of inadequate water supply to the canals that channel the water to the irrigation schemes. Concerned that limited water supply to the hinterland and irrigation schemes cause severe hunger to the residents of Tana River, death of livestock, and conflicts between farmers and herders, and that floods cause death, displacements, and other challenges like waterborne diseases such as cholera downstream at the Tana Delta. Now, therefore, the Senate urges the Ministry of Water, Sanitation, and Irrigation, in conjunction with the Water Resources Authority, to 1, conduct stakeholder participation before undertaking any major upstream activity, including construction of dams, before release of water during rainy season, and limiting flow of water to River Tana during the dry season. 2, develop a policy in line with the treaty, the Nile Treaty of 1959, to guarantee average annual flow of the River Tana. And 3, come up with mitigation measures to the perennial floods and water scarcity to the residents of Tana Delta. Mr. Speaker, I want to explain the basis of this motion, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, for many years, the people living downstream the River Tana have suffered and have borne the brunt of the activities that are carried upstream the River Tana. Mr. Speaker, developments have been done upstream, and we have nothing against those developments. But Mr. Speaker, these developments have had a huge impact on the ecosystem downstream. Mr. Speaker, these developments have caused great losses to the people of the river, those who occupied the river basin in Tana River. And this, Mr. Speaker, affects both the Tana River County and also Garissa County. Mr. Speaker, as the water is moving from the highlands and it's going downstream, Mr. Speaker, the livelihoods of our people depend on what happens with this river. When I was younger, Mr. Speaker, there was flooding of this river. And when this flooding occurs, Mr. Speaker, the water then recedes. And when it recedes, it was a beautiful time of planting. Everybody used to know it is time for planting. And people would go and plant on the rich alluvial soils that have been left by the receding waters of the river. And there will be plentiful of harvest, Mr. Speaker. The Delta used to remove a lot of rice. Nobody used to talk about hunger in the basin of Tana River. Mr. Speaker, it was a time of rejoicing and celebration when the rivers would recede and the people would go to do the planting. Mr. Speaker, this has changed. The livelihoods of many people in the basin has changed completely. Mr. Speaker, the volumes of the water that is coming from upstream going into the sea has receded so much to the level that all those areas that used to be areas where alluvial soils would be deposited and then farming would take place in the traditional manner, these areas, because of the reduced volume of the water that is coming down, Mr. Speaker, the sea has started asserting itself. And when it asserts itself, Mr. Speaker, those lands, they have now become areas of salt deposits. Mr. Speaker, those farmlands have been converted into areas where salt is deposited and therefore no farming takes place. Mr. Speaker, our people have become impoverished. The whole ecosystem that used to exist, life the way it used to be free and happy, it is no longer there because now the whole system has been changed by the power of the sea. Mr. Speaker, the motion is bringing to the attention of the nation and this House, Mr. Speaker, to pronounce itself that the people who are at the bottom have as much right to this water as the people who are upstream. And Mr. Speaker, this motion tries to bring in the whole debate about participation of communities in this country. Mr. Speaker, some communities are so small that their voices are not able to be heard when big programs are being arranged. Mr. Speaker, there is no other way that they will be helped if this Senate does not pronounce itself on this matter. Mr. Speaker, dams have been created upstream. And Mr. Speaker, when it is dry season, we pay the price because there is no water downstream. And Mr. Speaker, when the rainy season begins, like it has now, and the dams are full, and then the water is excess upstream, the only thing they will tell us downstream is that you people need to move to higher ground because we are going to release waters. Mr. Speaker, KenGen in particular has been our greatest enemy downstream. They release these waters with so much energy. Mr. Speaker, you could be sleeping in your house, and then in the morning you find you are not even on your bed. Mr. Speaker, people have lost animals in their thousands, in their hundreds, because water is released, and then when it comes, the communities downstream, they pay the price the second time, that they make huge financial losses. And Mr. Speaker, the question begs, when these programs and when these developments were being done, were there stakeholder participation by communities downstream? Mr. Speaker, the answer is negative. Mr. Speaker, when these projects were being conceived, apparently for the good of the country, were there any benefits that were transferable to the communities downstream? Mr. Speaker, the answer is negative. Mr. Speaker, when these projects were being done, were there environmental impact assessments that were carried? And how were these reports done? Because, Mr. Speaker, when you look at it, none of these environmental impact assessment reports on all these major projects have mentioned the river basin, have mentioned Garissa County or Tana River County. Mr. Speaker, yet we bear the brunt of all the losses that affect us downstream. Mr. Speaker, there are many experts who have studied river ecology, who are experts in lake ecology, and they tell us that the water upstream actually belongs to the people downstream. And Mr. Speaker, if projects are being done upstream, the biggest stakeholders are the people downstream. Mr. Speaker, in none of these projects that have been done on the River Tana have there been even a delegation of members of parliament who have been there before us, or elders from downstream who have been called to be told, you know, now your river is going to be dammed and this and that is going to happen. None has ever happened. There has been no stakeholder participation. There has been open suppression of the people, Mr. Speaker. And there's been no voice that has been given to those minorities whose lives depends on that river. Mr. Speaker, when we were growing up, there were oxbow lakes. When the river recedes, people used to do a lot of fishing. Mr. Speaker, there's no oxbow lakes anymore. When we were growing up, Mr. Speaker, the river used to move with force. People used to even use it for irrigation downstream. Mr. Speaker, now you will find the river has lost its power. You will find the river is cutting off entire villages because upstream, Mr. Speaker, the volume and the strength of the river has been cut down. And then you will find villages, Mr. Speaker, making homes of thousands of people, ancestral homes. They are cut off because the river comes, and then because it does not have power, it starts changing. It goes to the bushes, and people are left, whole communities, Mr. Speaker, that never used to know the lack of water. Whole communities that used to know that if I want to shower, I just go to the river. Now, Mr. Speaker, the river changes. And the government of Kenya, Mr. Speaker, has not been there to respond to our people. And the people have continued to be marginalized and impoverished, Mr. Speaker. And nothing has happened. So what this motion, Mr. Speaker, is asking this House is to recognize that we have a right as people who are downstream, as much as those people upstream have a right. And anything that is being done upstream will affect us downstream. And we are Kenyans, Mr. Speaker. We did not come here as refugees. We are Kenyans, and we have a right, and we need to be consulted. And Mr. Speaker, this Senate needs to pronounce itself very strongly. The Ministry of Water Irrigation, the Water Resources, the Water Resource Authority, it needs to start looking at the rights of the people who are downstream, so that, Mr. Speaker, everything that is being done upstream, we must be consulted. Mr. Speaker, in this motion, I have sought to bring to the attention of the House that the Anglo-Egyptian agreements that were signed by the British and the Egyptians were to the effect of protecting water sources. Mr. Speaker, 3 agreements were signed, 3 treaties were signed by the British and the colonies that were under the British at that time. And Egypt was seeking to protect, because it is a country that is downstream. The Nile River, Mr. Speaker, starts from Uganda and the areas, and then it moves through Sudan. Not Masai Mara. Mr. Speaker, can you protect
Honorable
me?
Senator Ledama, kindly could we hear the Senator in silence, please?
So, Mr. Speaker, it starts from upstream and it goes down to Sudan, then it divides the White Nile, the Blue Nile, and it goes all the way to Egypt. Mr. Speaker, Egypt in many occasions has been prepared. Mr. Speaker, Egypt in many occasions has been prepared to go to war because of its waters. And that is why to sort out these problems, there have been treaties, in fact 3 treaties that have been signed to protect the volumes of water that are moving upstream and going downstream. Mr. Speaker, the first treaty that was signed, if I may recollect, was in 1903. And in that treaty, Mr. Speaker, Sudan at that time, which was a colony of Britain, was informed that you cannot do any economic or irrigation activities upstream because it will affect the life of Egypt downstream. And Egypt was prepared to go to war. And Mr. Speaker, that is why for a very long time there has been no irrigation or any works that were being done because of that first treaty. Mr. Speaker, the second treaty and the third treaty, in fact the 1959 treaty, it actually allocated the volumes of water. How much water would be, is supposed, the million of cubic waters that are supposed to be for Egypt, those ones that are supposed to be for South Sudan, or now the Sudan, and those ones that are supposed to be remaining with Uganda. And Mr. Speaker, the bulk of this water was allocated to Egypt. In fact, Mr. Speaker, in the 1959 treaty, if I may be able to quote it properly, Mr. Speaker, the allocation for Egypt was 55.5 billion cubic waters, or 66% of the volumes of the River Nile. Mr. Speaker, 22% or 18.5 billion cubic waters was allocated to the other colonies, and 12%, Mr. Speaker, was provided for evaporation. But when you look at that treaty and the details within which the provisions of that treaty stated, you see that Egypt, which was the downstream state, was given the bulk or the majority of the water, Mr. Speaker. So we are saying, Mr. Speaker, as we carry out activities of upstream, the River Tana, they should remember in international law, international treaty, the water belongs to the downstream people. The people upstream must use it with that in mind. We don't have, we don't have tanks. We don't have a military of our own. We don't have war machines. But Mr. Speaker, I'm telling you today, if the people of Tana River were to be given those machines, we would cause war against any person who touches that river. That river is life. That river gives us our identification. Mr. Speaker, I, Danson Mungatana, when I was born in Ngao, Mr. Speaker, my umbilical cord, Mr. Speaker, was cut and thrown in the river. That is the connection, Mr. Speaker, that river has with the people of the River Tana. Mr. Speaker, I want to ask this Senate, Mr. Speaker, to understand that the river is our life. The river is almost something that is almost connected to some sort of deity. Mr. Speaker, our people are suffering because this river is drying up. The activities upstream are destroying the lives of the people downstream. And Mr. Speaker, the government has not changed its mind about how to treat us downstream. Mr. Speaker, when they were diverting the water of River Tana down to the basin of Athi River to create water here for Nairobi, this huge project that was being done, I remember very well that the opposition in this nation, and I hope they continue being strong, it is the opposition that rose and said, you people are going to drain the basin of the river and the people are going to die. Mr. Speaker, that project has continued and it has not even involved